we listen too much and do too little.
I agree. I think like taking action is definitely like the most important part of any entrepreneurial journey. Love it.
Yeah.
Hey, Bootstrappers! Welcome to Bootstrap Stories, the podcast where founders, marketers, and thoughtful leaders share the most actionable tips on building a successful business. After meeting with hundreds of bootstrappers in the past years, I figured out that we all struggle to grow our businesses. But the truth is that most of us don't know where to ask for help or advice. That's why I decided to start this podcast, to give you all the keys to succeed at every stage of your business. All the tested strategies for solving your struggles and taking your business to a new level. No fluff, no bullshit, only a real talk between friends that help each other succeed.
So today my guest for this episode is Karthik Sridharan, co-founder and CEO of Flexiple. Karthik, it's a real pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, G. Really fun to have, to be here and really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, same. As I was saying, before we start is I've been following, everything you've done in the last years around bootstrapping and growing. And I think your story is really, really inspiring. And I love also your mission because I do feel like we're aligned, in helping more entrepreneurs grow and sharing a lot of knowledge. So today, there are 3 topics that I want to discuss, which I think will basically provide tons of value for our audience. The first one is, understand more about your company, the growth, get some numbers and share the ups and downs. Then I want to focus, on kind of side project marketing and what you did with Remote.tools and how it's been driving traffic for you. And finally, I want to share the learnings and your biggest learning as an entrepreneur. Sounds cool?
Sounds cool, G. Yeah. So I just want to say that, we've been having a few conversations over Twitter and LinkedIn, and it's been really a lot of fun talking to you over there and really inspiring. Your empire is really inspiring as well. As I was just telling you before this started officially. So it's triggered a lot of conversations between me and my co-founders as well. So really appreciate it.
That's cool. We're all helping each other grow, and I guess that's the goal of the podcast also.
Absolutely, yeah.
So for those of you who are new to Flexible, can you maybe share a bit of your story, when you started, the numbers, etc.?
Sure. In a nutshell, Flexible is actually a very simple business. So we're a network of really curated, high pre-vetted freelance developers and designers. So it's a network of such high quality individuals. And then we connect them with tech startups and companies across the globe. So it's been about now 5 years, 7 years if you count the 2 years that we spent during our college as well. And so it's been a fun journey. I found my co-founders in college itself, in my MBA college. And in the first couple of years, we made a lot of silly errors, like every first-time entrepreneurs. This was our first company that we built together. And it largely stems with what most people do as well. We believe that we're going to rake millions and millions of dollars immediately. So we wanted to build for scale. So we had a really complex tech product that we built. We'd automated everything. We had artificial intelligence, so to say, sort of an algorithm and everything, so all the buzzwords that we'd heard everywhere, we wanted our startup to have it. And it all bombed, not just once, but we built 2 products and it bombed both the times because I think at the end of the day, freelance developers and designers wanted projects, to work on, and the companies wanted amazing people to work with. And what we were telling them was to forcibly come on this platform or the tech that we had built. And everyone was like, why? Who are you? Right? Why should we ever do that? So we actually threw both those products into the bin and actually started by just opening up a Google Sheet and created 2 tabs, one called freelancers, one called companies. Okay. And we just started noting down the people we were speaking to, who were ready to speak to us. And then manually just started connecting the 2 of them. We used to raise invoices manually, send mails, talk to each person, physically, manually, or calls such as this. So it was very interesting. It just sort of highlighted a few typical mistakes that entrepreneurs make, the core of which is to sort of build try to build for scale, the fictitious scale before even being able to establish something small. Yeah. So that's what we did. And it was fun. We made our first $100,000 through Google Sheets itself. And,
Nice.
and that's where we slowly started then automating a lot of different things. And now Flexible is growing really well. In the past year and a half, we've gone from around 700,000 in total project value to about 3.5 million.
Wow.
So it's been tough in the last 4-5 months again,
Okay.
because a lot of the growth has been driven by founders, right?
Okay.
Like me and the other two founders of mine, and like we have a good team, but like they're relatively junior, and we wanted to hire a more senior management or get them in place. And it's been a little tricky because that's not been our skill set, and it's not our skill set even today. So the last 6 months have been a little tricky, and like I'm still trying to find my feet in terms of being able to scale this to the next level. I've learned a lot of things even in the last 6 months, and I feel now I'm at a place where we can actually scale flexibly.
I think I have so many questions right now. I don't know which one I'm going to pick first, but let's go back a bit to what you say so I can like kind of recap. You started like creating products where, like you're in the startup world. So obviously, and, I suffered from it as well in the early days. You want AI, you want machine learning, you want to have all the buzzwords. And down the line, like you went to the point where you decided to like kill 2 of your products because you felt like it was not working, and you switched to like doing like Google Sheet. And this is where you actually make like 100K out of Google Sheet, which I think is an amazing lesson. From that point where you decide to like kill the products, what happens? Like, when did you decide to do it? What was like the reasoning behind it? And how do you find like the strengths to move from, we have built a tech product, we have spent like so much energy into it, and we're going to switch from that to just a Google Sheet? Because obviously like the first thinking is like, as a founder, you would say, okay, we could have done that from the beginning, etc. So it's a lot to take in. So what was your like thought process at the time?
No, great questions actually. So the basic context over there was the first couple of years, as I told you, was during my MBA college. So for me, I considered those years as bonus years for me. So I felt that I was not losing time, so to say, right? Like this was, so while everyone else was preparing for their internships and, interviewing with various different companies, I said, this is all the time that I'm saving from there. I'm going to invest into our company. So therefore, from that particular mindset, I never felt that I accepted that I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, right? Like it was going to be, and there's no entrepreneurial, like there's been no one in my family, even extended family, who's been an entrepreneur themselves, right? So so this was my first venture, my family's first venture into it. So yeah, it was going to be a little tricky. And largely, I think our bank balances were running pretty low, right? Like, so each one of the 3 co-founders had worked for about 3 years before MBA college. So we had saved up a good amount of money, and we had already spent all of it building the 2 products. So now it got to a place where we had to start getting revenue, right? Or we had to raise money. And our perspective, like we're from a good college in India, and like it's one of the top colleges in India. So I think we would have managed to raise money. But somehow we felt that even if we have to consider that path, we would want to build something we're proud of and then go to raise money. So with that perspective, we needed revenue. And the only way that we saw at that point of time was, okay, the tech product isn't getting a lot of traction, and either we can really be pig-headed about it and say this is the only thing that we're going to do, or we're going to do whatever the business needs us to do. And I think that kind of flexibility to do what the business needs versus what we thought is what the tech media talks about, all the fancy stuff. Yeah. So I think that kind of flexibility really helped us then. And it's been true even thereafter, because if you think about it, we've broken a lot of stereotypes, so to say, because bootstrapping, not very fashionable. We've spoken about it. So we've been very clear we'll bootstrap. Thereafter, most of the products are built on code. We decided, okay, Google Sheets, and thereafter as well, we have largely picked no code products. And even till today, a large part of our tech stack is on no code.
Nice.
Thereafter, all our team is remote. So we, meet each other only occasionally. Again, remote is said, okay, early stage startup, you need to be in the same physical space to exchange ideas. So again, there's been a lot of noise around all of this. Even paid marketing, we do $0 in paid marketing. All of our marketing is organic in nature. So I think in that way, we've sort of learned to be able to find our own truths, right? And not to just adhere to what is popularly said. So that's where I think after the first couple of years, when we made those two products, we were able to say, okay, maybe we were wrong about understanding the space, and maybe a lot of the popular things that are floating around are not necessarily true. And we need to find our own truths. And that got us to this. And we were ready to sort of drop it all and go through Google Sheets.
Yeah, I think this is an awesome story and really great learnings for people who want to get started. Just to do things with the least resources possible first, trying to get revenue, because the thing is when you have a lot of savings, it is true that you can you are in some sort of comfort where you are to a stage, where you're okay, I have time, but actually, time flies when you're an entrepreneur, and moving towards this, I think it was nice to see that you could get traction and then learn from your mistakes and kind of build through no code, because your co-founders are technical, or you're all more biz guys?
No, so my co-founder, one of them is a high tech guy. He's worked in Amazon, he's worked in Adobe. So I think that also pushed us to think in that direction in terms of tech. Mm-hmm. And but even the other two, like me and my other co-founder, are also engineers. So even we know to code, even we understand it well. But yeah, so I think being engineers, you think that you would be really good in the tech industry, but that also gives you a handicap because you think everything has to be solved through tech, right? So that's been a bit tricky.
And going back to after the Google Sheet and you starting getting traction, what were for you the best way to start acquiring customers? What were the steps in the early days to get to that 100K?
Yeah, so I think it's been a theme that I've sort of shared a lot as well, because again, we thought that people would somehow mysteriously just find us, and that never happened. So I think early on, what worked for us and what I suggest others also to do is just sales. Just reach out to people, because marketing is great. And I really love marketing as a function. But I think to generate momentum and to also be in immediate contact with your customers, nothing is better than sales, right? And early on, you don't know how to pitch your company, you don't know the messaging. And there's nothing better than customers telling you that you did shit. It just did. No, that's not what I want to hear. So it really helped us. And that's what we did. We used LinkedIn a lot. So the entire idea was to be able to find tech startups, and ironically tech startups that got a bit of funding in the recent past. So they would be trying to expand their teams. And what we basically did is we found each tech startup and we tried to look at whom we know in that particular company, right? And we just listed each person down and started just, reaching out to them cold, and whoever, were kind enough to have a conversation with us, we then ask them to connect us with a relevant person in their team. And that's how we got one customer after another, and a few of them started recommending us to other people. So the first 100K was a lot of us doing outreach in our personal network and their immediate network, and then a few word of mouth and a few lucky breaks. So I think first 100,000 or first whatever that milestone is has to come from sales. So for us, that's what it was.
And I think it's so many learnings here, because there are two things that you highlighted that I think are really important. The first thing is that you were doing this with also one of your co-founders, going after clients and really doing this as a team. I think is super important. So for people who are kind of solopreneur, I think I would advise also to find another entrepreneur buddy, you can do that with him, because sales is tricky. Like you're going to get a lot of doors slammed on your face, and it's harsh.
It's bad. It's bad. You need a shoulder to cry on. They've been really brutal days. I have a lot of respect for salespeople.
Yeah,
it's really tough. Yeah,
and I do feel also like the other thing that was really interesting in what you said is that we all have, depending on the school we've done, like where we've worked, etc. Like we all have a network. Like if you go on LinkedIn, and I think it's a great example, you will know people, and we feel like when we're launching something that we should directly find totally like new and different people, etc. Like from the start. However, like your strategy of reaching out to people to get introduction, or just potentially sales call if they are a fit, I think it's something that very few people do, and it actually works, and you're like the living proof of it. So that's really great. And I see you do like you've been posting like a lot, documenting and doing a lot of like marketing overall. Like, so when did you started like this process of documenting everything and like starting doing marketing so you drive like more traffic for Flexible?
Right, G. So I think the early days were all about sales, and then we sort of realized that it plateaued a bit. And we also sort of recognized that our target audience on the company side is more in the West, and particularly in the US. And our network over there was zilch, right? We knew no one. And the only way to then go about it was that they find us in some way, or we start doing some bit of cold mailing. We tried cold mails and somehow it didn't work. I feel that especially in our industry, there are a lot of Indian companies reaching out to US tech companies. So there's not, the reputation isn't great. So that particular channel didn't work for us. And so we started recognizing that we need inbound traffic to come to Flexible. And we thought of a few different ways. One, of course, we thought of paid marketing. We tried Google Ads, and that also failed because it's, again, a very competitive industry. And the CPCs are off the roof, and we recognize that when we possibly have a lot, a much bigger budget, we might be able to do something about that. So finally, it came down to SEO. Search engine optimization, then a bit of being able to identify those good launch platforms like Product Hunt, interacting on Indie Hackers, then maybe a bit on Reddit and so on. And then very grudgingly, we started becoming a little bit more active on social media. So all three including me, all three founders are very introverted in nature. So none of us had any social profiles. Right? Even LinkedIn was something that we were told that you need to have. So we had it and we never used it. And Twitter, I never had. I never even had a Facebook profile, which I still don't. So
You're not losing on much, to be honest.
Yeah, so that was my feeling exactly. So I felt I wasn't losing much, but then I started recognizing that possibly as a founder, I'm doing a disservice to my own company. By not, because already as a bootstrapped company, we're, sort of pushing it a bit because like VC funded startups get very easy media attention, right? Like you're immediately on TechCrunch and people are talking about you. So for us, that's not the case. So I felt that we need to own our own story. And given that we are introverted and that's not easy for us to do, what we decided is that we'll just share whatever we are learning. We will share a few successes that we have. So we've been doing this for about 2 years now. So it's been a learning curve for sure, because from being a person who doesn't know to use social media to doing it, very consistently. Even today, it's not that easy for me, to be very honest, because it's something that my personality is not super aligned to. But still, I do it. I feel I've gotten better, but certainly not comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your content overall is great. Like I always love interacting with your posts and I think it's super important, and it's quite interesting because even though people don't always see it, I'm initially an introvert as well. So for me, the first time I had to post or do videos or things like that, it was the worst, the worst feeling ever. So
I can imagine.
What has been for you kind of this, the plan when you started? Was it just, okay, I'm going to do a post and I'll see? Or did you say, okay, I've read like all these things. Apparently you need to be consistent. So I'm going to go at it for like 60 days, 1 post per day and hardcore type of things. Like how did you get started?
So I think, I've accepted it a bit that, as a founder, you would think that a lot of things that you do, at least from the outside, people think it's a fancy life. You get to choose your own time, you're doing your own thing. But I've sort of accepted that being a founder is pretty shitty. You do all the shitty things which you promised you'd never do in life. So even when we started off with this, social media thing, we sort of accepted that we'll have to do this for a while before people even start identifying with who we are. Right. So it was not a 60-day plan. Frankly, I think for the first 6 months, I hardly got any traction. It was just my co-founders, being kind enough to like my post. So it's
for me, it was my mom.
It was your mom. That's a good reminder. I'll tell my mom to join Twitter as well. But it was tough. It was tough, and I didn't. But we recognized that it was going to be tough, and we just, we just sort of pushed our way through. We said we have to be consistent. So I used to make 2 tweets every day, and it died of solitude, but I still did it every day. But yeah, it was good. I think of a couple of posts then worked for us, and then it started a journey. And I think we've used a lot of engineering mind to this as well, because I think the engineering mindset works in every field, which is to keep experimenting, seeing what's working for you, what's working for someone else, what can you learn from them. So we brought that into this as well. So it was tough, but I think instead of trying to look at this in a very different way than we do other things, we try to bring some of our usual mindset into it, the same engineering mindset. And I think it's sort of worked out 6 to 8 months through it. I even used to write a newsletter, and it got some 3,000, 4,000 subscribers, and we decided to drop it because it was getting really tough. Yeah, too much work, and we didn't think that it was giving us enough of purchase. So now I dropped that, and then I decided that I'll work on Twitter and LinkedIn. So I decided that I've already failed once. I can't fail on Twitter and LinkedIn. I couldn't go back to my co-founders and say, sorry, I failed a year as well.
Going back to the newsletter.
Going back to the newsletter. Yeah, that wouldn't fly with them. So I think we just pushed through, and somehow we got through that.
No, that's really inspiring. And I think for everyone listening, it's really the key thing to remember. It takes time, and do it consistently. And I 100% agree with, engineering things. I think you can even make it kind of a game. It's just blast. I do so many things because I think in the first months or even year, you need to do volume, because the thing is the more you do, the better you'll get at it. And it's not about crafting the perfect thing. It's just about producing, putting yourself out there, and down the line, there is something that's going to work out, and you're going to understand why. And step by step, you can double down. And I think you've done it brilliantly. So really congrats on that. And I was also wondering, because you were telling about, how the newsletter was not potentially driving enough business, etc. But you started this side project, which was from what I've read, quite a nice way to drive traffic. So can you maybe explain a bit why you launched the side project, how did you manage to do it, and the type of traction you got?
Sure, Jay. So basically, it was around the same time where we were trying to look for other channels to acquire customers, and we recognized that our own network isn't going to cut it. So amongst the many different channels that we were trying, one was side projects, and we sort of profiled our target companies, and we recognized that they were companies who were comfortable with remote work. And the idea was, of course, they were possibly in the West, particularly the US. So what we decided was just to curate a lot of the tools that are out there and to give a lot of information, because we were a remote company ourselves as well. So we knew all the typical difficulties people would face. So we decided that there are a lot of tools out there, there are a lot of problems remote companies face. So we might as well curate them, give our information. And companies can, instead of doing their own due diligence on the tools to use our platform to find the right tools. And the idea was that we'll subtly market Flexible through it. and as a consequence of helping the target audience, maybe they'll find Flexible and they'll possibly post a few projects on our platform. It did work out. I think it did very well on Product Hunt, and then,
Nice.
but yeah, we were very, I think, ignorant of most of the other marketing channels. Product Hunt became our only marketing channel as a typical early entrepreneur. So a lot of our traction came from there, and we started a newsletter which did well. So we did a lot of hard work actually even after that. And I think if I have to be absolutely brutally honest here, I think the risk reward ratio wasn't great, and the amount of even effort reward ratio wasn't that great. Largely because of our own incompetence, I would say, with marketing. Yeah, I have to be actually very brutal. I think we didn't do a great job of marketing it, and but
What would
eventually
you do differently if you had to like redo it?
yeah, I think the first year we were just super dependent on Product Hunt, and like it seemed like, I think Product Hunt, when it works, it seems so beautiful that you think that okay, that's going to be the only channel that's going to deliver all the dreams I've had in my life, right? So you recognize that it's not that way. It's a bit of a lottery, right? So when we recognize that, and we took some time to recognize it, when after our first launch, I think 2-3 launches didn't do well. We believed that we didn't do the launch properly, and didn't sort of try to understand that maybe most of your launches aren't going to do that great, right? So do it differently. I think we would have to really diversify our marketing channels, right? So just Product Hunt's not going to cut it. You have to have some presence on social platforms, distribute your product there. You have to have some presence on search engines. So you should have a good SEO profile, drive traffic from there. And even the first time when we sort of did well on Product Hunt, we never collected emails, right? So we just lost all the traffic. We knew nothing about what we were doing. So getting all those emails, actually making an email list out of it, I think a lot of these things were not intuitive to us then. And now in hindsight, we are so smart about it, but yeah, those years have gone. But I think we've learned. So Remote.tools, we decided to build it into a product to itself. We decided that we wanted to build a sort of a remote work community. And we actually ran a newsletter for close to a year and a half or two, and wrote a lot of stuff around remote work. We had a podcast as well where we got top companies like GitLab, InVision, interviewed them, started sharing that content on our platform. We also tried to accelerate things from our side, but we didn't get traction on remote on our remote community. And we also recognized the large part of it was because we were not super passionate about remote work. We liked it, but we weren't super passionate that we would be willing to talk about it day and night. And I don't know if it's a reflection of what we felt about it, but we felt a similar energy from the audience as well. We felt that even they liked it, but they wouldn't talk about it day and night, right? And versus, I think in the last couple of years, both Rishikesh, my co-founder, and I have been talking a lot on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we've gotten a lot of good energy from our audience around startups and what we're doing, and that resonated a lot more with us. So that's where we sort of made the tough decision to shut down Remote Clan, our community, and instead invest our energy into a new project called Build, Build.co. And there whatever we've been sharing on Twitter, we've been sharing all our lessons on the platform. And the idea is to be able to create a good network, a community where we as members of the startup community can help each other. And I think there's a lot of lies and half-truths on Twitter and LinkedIn. So we just want to curate and get the best information over there and make it very accessible to all the entire startup community. So we've directed our energies there and moved away a bit from our earlier projects, Remote.tools and Remote Clan.
I think that's, I love like your mindset on, like what you said about we were not passionate talking about it like day and night. And I think like people could feel it. And I agree like 100% as a founder, if you're launching like communities, if you're launching like, or if you start like talking about like something online, you have to be passionate because like people would just like write things and potentially like make money out of it. And that's their only motivation. Down the line, they all like stop doing it. Like they will fatigue, they will like lose motivation. It's
Yeah.
and yeah, and if you can find like this, and for you, like I agree. What's nice is that you've been going through the ups and downs. Like it's basically effortless talking about your journey. You know, it's like
Exactly.
it's the nicest thing, you know, to do as a founder, because you
Yeah.
just talk about your life, you know. So
Exactly. And it's a lot of fun. And we never thought people would actually resonate with it. So, but when they did, we decided, okay, why are we like sort of pushing things in a place where we're not passionate? We might as well be talking about things we're super passionate about. So, yeah.
no, that's really interesting. And so I think for our audience, like to me, like the key takeaways of like the recent things you've shared is like, find your passion, stick to it, be consistent. Like don't really like focus only on one channel, because it's better to
Yeah.
kind of don't put all your eggs in the same basket, you know. And
Exactly.
even though actually, which is quite interesting, you know, like you would see a lot of advice, as you said, like online on Twitter, where people would tell you like, okay, focus on that one channel and nail it, etc. Actually,
Yeah.
like for us, it's been exactly the same. Like we've done so many different things, and it was not one channel that helped us work. And I do feel like, to build up on what you were saying, that each channel actually helps you grow, because for you, it's because you've done a newsletter, a side project, trying to grow on SEO, etc., that you've learned so much that now whenever you like trying to build your personal brand and growing your personal brand, it's easy, because you're talking about things that you've done, you're talking about your
Exactly.
mistakes, you're talking about your learnings, which make
Yeah.
it very like credible, and for people it's easy to relate on all of that. So I think it's it's really really interesting, and I'm sure it's gonna be like a source of motivation for people. And my question is, down the line, you know, like you mentioned that obviously there were like some downs, you hit a plateau, and at some point you had to do other things. Like, how do you face like challenges? Because right now, for example, you're telling me that with HR it's a bit tricky. So once you're facing challenges, like what's your mindset?
Oh, that's a nice and a tough question at the same time. Um, I think there are a few things. One is, I think there is a certain amount of stability in my daily life,
Okay.
right? So I think I try to keep myself very disciplined and have a very robust routine. So every morning I wake up, I work out for about 45 minutes or an hour.
Nice.
Then I have a very cute dog called, I treat him as my son.
Nice.
So I I take him to the park. So we play with his friends for about an hour or so there. Then I come back, and then I'm slowly ready for my work day. Right, so about 9:30. So even there, like my work day starts with me making one tweet, then having a conversation with my team, then starting with the various things that I have. So it's very sort of regimented to a certain degree. There's a running joke in my family that if you know the time, you know what Karthik's doing. You know, so it's very routine driven. So I think all the randomness that the startup world brings, and our own startups, you know, there's just so much of randomness associated with it. This sort of stability gives me a certain cadence, which I'm happy with. I know that if I wake up, these are things that I do, and that adds a bit more of stability in my life. That's one thing. And secondly, I think I have a very strong reason behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. I really enjoy, building a company. I'm really, it's tough to like. I know you would understand it very easily, but it's tough to explain to someone who's not as passionate about building companies. So I think I really just enjoy, whether it's succeeding or failing, I feel really very energized about talking about what I'm doing, actually doing things. Even when I'm failing, I'm really happy that I learned a certain set of things. So all of that like sort of motivates me. And when I look at the other option on the table, which is to go work for someone else, I would never do it. So I've already done it. I worked at JP Morgan in the investment banking division, and that gave me the worst experience I could ever, and I never want to do it again. Right. So I think I have a very strong reason around why I'm doing what I'm doing. So these things help me when I get into challenges, because I get to understand, I just get back to questioning myself why I'm doing this, and I remember why I'm doing it. I also remember that I've had a lot of progress from where I started. Right. So I faced similar challenges, maybe worse. and I've come through it. And when I say I know, like, I mean, from my entire company. So, so I am sure that I would get through this one as well, and the typical questions I ask myself is, would I remember this challenge in a week? Would I remember it in a month? Would I remember it in a year? If I'm not going to remember it in a month, it's all cool.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to remember it in a month, maybe give it a bit of attention and like a bit of worry. But if I'm not going to remember it in a month, in a year, most of the things we forget them, right? So in the longer scheme of things, especially for us, given we are not a typical VC funded startup and are not looking to sell this and move on, we are looking to build this for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So I just ask myself, if I'm not going to remember about this in a year as well, in the large scheme of things, it's all good, So I think that's how I think of challenges largely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like it's really interesting, like to have this a routine as a stability. So that your head is, you have your schedule. You are like doing something steady that's good, like for yourself, and that keeps you afloat. I do feel like what's interesting is knowing why you're doing things, and for you, it's like your passion. Like that you don't want to go and find a job. That you love what you're doing. And the third thing, which I think is something I have also like experienced, is the more you face challenges, the more exciting it gets whenever you have a new challenge. Because for me, I'm exactly the same as you. It's like the first time we had like a bug or a challenge or something like that, I thought I was going to die. Like I was like, this is the end, like we're never going to make it. The business, it's over. I've lost my life. It's over. But then, like after facing 100 challenges, and I think like the way you talk about it, I can definitely relate to that. It's like, it's good, like I'm going to learn something. It's something I'm going to go stronger. It's like, it's not about the storm. It's how you go out of the storm or something like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it's super inspiring because like the more you do things, and you've been doing a lot, the more confident you get, about what's coming next, and the less intimidating any challenge can be. And I think like this is a great lesson for people like listening, is that you have to go do your challenges. And as you said, I think like the question asking yourself, would I remember this in a month or a year, is a great way. And my question to you is like, because this is something we haven't like discussed too much. Do you feel like the fact that as a bootstrap company, because you don't have investors and because you are profitable, do you feel like you have this feeling of infinite lifetime and you don't have this stress of, okay, there is a challenge, I have 1 month to get over it, otherwise I'm dying, kind of like give you the strength to continue and the same energy and the same like vibe?
Yeah, totally. I think as a bootstrap company, there's a lot of energy. I think there's a lot more control on what we want to do. There's a lot more, at various points in time, we face, I think, two paths, right? Like each entrepreneur at various points in time have to make decisions, right? And we face two paths, and I think we are able to take decisions, not necessarily always saying that, in a typical entrepreneurial context, this is the path someone would take. We also are able to account for our own personality. We are also able to account for the lifestyle that we want, right? And I think there's a little more say about, because at the end of the day, we are people as well, right? So I think that's really empowering to in a large context. And I think bootstrapping is largely two parts, right? Like the first part is hell, right? The first couple of years is just pure hell. And you would rather just want to be a VC funded company at that point in time, because you have easy money. Otherwise, as a bootstrap company, you're always just fighting to stay afloat. If you don't get a customer, you don't have a company. So it's tough the first couple of years to stay afloat. But I think once you've gotten that lift off, the amount of freedom and space that you get to do what you're really passionate about, I think it's unparalleled as a bootstrap company, because and that's where I sort of like talk with my peers as well, and I try to tell them that your goal is to get to a place where you can earn enough so that you get the lifestyle that you want. Don't think about the millions initially, the millions and the billions of dollars. Right? And once you're able to get to the place where you're able to control your lifestyle, after that you just get wings. You can fly anywhere that you want, right? Because now no one controls you. Now you do exactly the things that you're really passionate about. So even with Build, I think we wouldn't have attempted this particular project a few years earlier. Now we've gotten to a place where we feel that we're comfortable. We feel that we've done certain things that will not question the existence of our company. So we want to take on more daring projects. We want to take on things we're really passionate about and build something that we'll really be proud of, right? So I think all of these things wouldn't have been exactly possible if we built a VC-funded company where possibly every month I'm answerable to someone else. Now the only people I'm answerable to are my two co-founders and our other team members, right? So, and it's really fun to build in that way. And we get to choose our own path as well. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I really love like that definition, of freedom and, like doing those things you love and what you're passionate about, because, like that's the essence of why we're on earth. It's like we want to do like these things, create, build. And if we can do it with love, I think it's just awesome. And, like I was wondering something. It's like, do you feel like as an entrepreneur, because something we never talk about is like kind of the entrepreneur fatigue. And, I see a lot of people after 3, 4, 5 years, they don't want to work on their project anymore. And if they were like VC backed, they have to be super focused because that's what everyone is telling them to do. You and me, we have like similar paths in a sense that we love to do like this side project and potentially experiment things. Do you feel like these side projects are actually like a great breather kind of thing where you just like, okay, you put your head out, you do something else, and it's going to give you idea for your main project, which is the one growing the fastest, the biggest one, the one bringing the biggest chunk on revenue? Like, how do you feel about that?
I think for me, so whenever we were picking up some of these side projects, Remote.tools was very different because at that point in time, I think we were not thinking of any company apart from Flexible. And Remote.tools came as a tool to market Flexible. So that's how it always was. But now when we're building something like Build, I'm like sort of as much as possible giving all my equal energies to both the projects. I think both have equal potential. Of course, Flexible brings in all the money. But Build is something of a big dream project of mine and also my co-founders. So it definitely gives me new insight into skills that I would never encounter with Flexible, right? Because Build is a very product-driven initiative that we've taken. So the way I would think of engagement on a platform, how we would distribute the content is very different. So there are new skill sets that I'm learning, which absolutely impact the way I think of Flexible as well. But it's not so much from a perspective of a breather, because I really give all my energies. And there are certain times when I'm also a little stretched too thin, right? Because I think, okay, I'm a little confused. There's 100% of work here, 100% of work there, but I'm just one person here, So, but yeah, it's fun, the only core thing in all of this for me is that I would never do something that I absolutely disliked. I know I'm writing on social media and so on and so forth, but it's still linked to things that I love. So indirectly, I still enjoy the process. But if we ever disliked building Flexible or even Build, I would back off and I would, end the entrepreneurial journey. So I think the fact that I feel passion in whatever I'm doing today is very crucial to doing anything, whether it's Flexible or Build. So it's not so much as a side project that I think of it as something that I really am producing from all the warmth and the energy that I have for it.
That's great. I love the mindset. And before we actually wrap this up, I usually have 3 questions that usually helps bootstrap entrepreneurs. So The first one is what would be the book or podcast that you would recommend to another bootstrap entrepreneurs? And you can give several if you.
Actually, to be very honest, G, I'll recommend this podcast now, but I usually don't listen to too many podcasts or books.
Okay.
I think a lot of books, actually, to be very honest, I feel are very long versions that say almost nothing. Not non-fiction books. I'd rather prefer to read very specific articles or blogs which teach me something actionable versus something generic that goes on for 200, 300 pages. Right? I prefer reading autobiographies. Certain around Elon Musk, the typical ones. So I enjoyed reading, but even them, I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. It's their own call. I think the only way I would rather learn is by doing.
Okay.
Right? So make mistakes. I tell this very frequently in my team. Just recognize and realize and accept the fact that you're going to be shitty on the first day. Your goal is only to be less shitty tomorrow. Right? So don't even assume you're going to be okay. You're going to be shitty, and your only goal is to be less shitty. And suddenly one day you'll realize you're good. All right. So largely just learning by doing. I think avoid as many books and podcasts as possible. I think we listen too much and do too little.
I agree. I think taking action is definitely the most important part of any entrepreneurial journey. Love it.
Yeah.
And who is the founder that you follow the most, like a bootstrap founder because you're a lot on Twitter and LinkedIn, so people produce content there. It's usually short, actionable. It takes less time than a book, and it can be inspiring. So for you, who are the founders or bootstrap founders that you follow?
So I read about a lot of people. As I told you, I read a lot about Lempire as well. So even you guys are super inspiring. Of course, Peter Levels, I think he's done a lot of good in terms of changing people's mindset towards only VC-backed companies versus also showing them that there's a world outside that. And then I have a lot of good friends on Twitter whom I keep interacting with. Like you, I interact with you, I interact with a lot of other friends who are in a similar journey. So a lot of them, but I think Peter Levels comes to mind just because I think as an individual, he's achieved a lot, so it tells me that you don't need 1,000 people company to build something of note. You can have a very small motivated team and you can do something really good as well. So I think as much as I don't like to follow too many people, but I think he's good. And as I told you, even Lempire, it striked a few good conversations, especially as I mentioned to you around the story that you guys sold a small stake off, just so that you guys can get to a lifestyle that, would also settle you down. It sparked that good conversation between my co-founders and me as well. So let's see where that takes us.
Nice. Curious to see in the coming months.
Cheers,
and the final question is, what's the one thing you do to regain energy when you have challenges or tough times?
Oh, no doubt about that. I play with my son, my dog, Rocket. So
what's his name? Rocket?
Rocket, yeah.
So, I like it.
yeah. So I love dogs, and I think they give me a lot of positive energy. So whenever I'm feeling down a bit or whatever, I think I play with him. I play with his friends, and I feel really very good. So I think they're really genuine creatures. So love playing with them. So that's my thing.
Awesome. Well, Karthik, thanks a lot for sharing all your journey, learnings, ups and downs with us. Where can people reach out to you or follow you? What's the best media?
So I think I write a lot on Twitter, and I reply to as many DMs as possible, and also LinkedIn. So these two are the two great places. And if we do catch up there, if I feel there's a need, I'll also share my mail ID. So I think Twitter and LinkedIn are the best places.
Awesome. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Thanks a lot, Karthik, and have an amazing day.
Thanks a lot, G. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for having me. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Bootstrap Stories, the only podcast where Bootstrap entrepreneurs share their journey in all transparency. If you enjoyed this episode, don't hesitate to leave us a review. And in case you want to see the interview, all episodes are live on the YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Have an amazing day and make sure to also join us in our amazing Bootstrap community where we all helped each other to become successful and grow a profitable business. Take care and talk to you soon.